Welcome to today's episode of Falling to Freedom, where addiction ends and faith begins. The weekly podcast that brings thoughtful, informed, and challenging discussions about addiction to the forefront of everyone's minds. We join our host now, Chad LaComb, for today's topic.
All right, well, today we are doing a Zoom meeting here with Jason Sautel, retired firefighter, and he's a author, a speaker around the country, and maybe soon to be a potential movie star, I think, right? And not without giving details, but maybe have a Hollywood movie coming out about your life story.
Yeah, I don't think I will be a star by any means, but they are scripting it together on my story. If they put me in front of the camera, it would be a dud movie, that's for sure.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Like I told you before, I read your book this weekend, and yeah, it was good. It's a page turner for sure, and put you on a emotional roller coaster, at times. So I enjoyed it, and I know other people, if they haven't had a chance to read it yet, they'd enjoy it as well. So with today's discussion, just trying to have a normal discussion with you about your life, about your experiences, and where I think it aligns, maybe not so much on like full-blown addiction, but certainly those triggers and those things that would cause a person to go into that. I noticed that very present in your book, and trauma as a child and just dealing with it in different ways. I think you guys within the first responder world call it maladaptive coping mechanisms, using these things like drugs or whatever to deal with, the stuff you deal with. I think in your book you said that firefighting was your drug, that adrenaline shot that you were getting from doing this. So with that, just maybe you could introduce yourself for listeners that don't know you, and we can just take it from there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first off, my name is Jason Sautel, as you already said, and I'm probably the biggest nobody that you've ever had on this podcast, but I really appreciate being here. I started my career as a firefighter at the age of 18, and then I finished up just a couple of years back and stuff due to an injury. And now I've moved into writing books, and I get to speak about my experiences and just talk about the struggles that come with the job, because it parallels into all areas of our life. It's not just that firefighters, EMS folks struggle, but it is a kind of tight, compact community that's hard to infiltrate from the outside. And so be able to take my experiences there and pour into my brothers and sisters in the firehouse, and then let the Lord walk me through it, and, scripturally bring people messages of hope and hope of recovery and how to overcome and who can help you overcome. That's just what I do now. And it's a blessing on so many levels, because it's just not one-sided. I deal with PTSD. If I have someone who comes to me and they're struggling with addiction, what I do is I hear them out, I give the sympathy, the real empathy, and then I point them to the help that they need, someplace that will start giving them the tools so they can start working their way out of where they are and stuff. So it's a really cool ministry that the Lord's given me. Every day it changes, but it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And just kind of, maybe you could set the stage with sharing a little bit of your background, because even though you never went into full-blown addiction, when I just read your book and I'm hearing about your background and all the opportunities you had to go into full-blown addiction, it's probably only by the grace of God that you didn't, right? So if you could just share some of that stuff, in your childhood, if you wouldn't mind, just to set the background for it.
Yeah, well, so when I was about 7 years old, my mom left my dad because my dad struggles. He's a good guy, but he doesn't know how to love. He was, raised in a tough Catholic home. When he was a child, he went to the Vietnam War, and my mom left him because she couldn't handle the abuse, and she was going to come back and get me. But because it was in the 80s and women back then usually didn't have as much money and stuff, my dad was the breadwinner, she couldn't afford to get me from him. So my dad kept me there. So I lived under a system of abuse until I was at the age of 18 and was able to move out of that house. And during that time, it was like darkness overshadowed me. I never felt the happiness that other people felt. I never saw the joy. When I was at school, I wouldn't be wearing the same clothes as everyone else. I didn't stink or anything. I didn't take showers and all that, but I just wasn't kept up like the other kids. And so even at school, I had no friends. Teachers would hammer down on me of saying, hey, get your homework done. Well, then I go home and tell my dad I need help. Well, then my dad would scream and yell at me and tell me excuse my language, it's the damn teacher's job, the darn teacher's job. Then I'd go to school and ask the teacher for help and she'll, your parents need to help you. And so I was caught in the middle of this, like being a child in a world I didn't understand. And it just kind of followed me. And to speed the story up, I was a high school dropout, but I was really encouraged by a group of firefighters that I once met to become a firefighter. So I went back and got my GED. And at the age of 18, I became a firefighter. But check this out, bro. I thought being a firefighter was going to save me. I thought it was going to make me better. That was my drug, if you will, right? Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't think about it at the time, but I'm going to become a firefighter. I'm going to help other people, and it's going to make me all better. Bro, what I started to experience even at the young age of 18 as a Riverside County firefighter, and this was a couple years before I joined the Oakland Fire Department, I wasn't ready for what I was getting into. Man, my brain wasn't even fully developed. And now I'm taking care of people who are dying, going to shootings, pulling people out of burning buildings, witnessing the worst of the worst. And I started to spiral downhill even more. And I was just totally hopeless because everything this world said would make me feel better, including going out with the guys and partying, picking up a hot chick, doing what firefighters do, buying a boat, getting a nice house. I did that. And I would get a momentary good feeling out of it. I'll be honest with you. But then I had nothing but depression and pain that came with it because I'd poured into this black hole inside me. The black hole would tear it up and I would be right back into the pain, but it would be even worse. So then I would go out with the guys again, go hang out with some chicks, go do something, fight some fire, even go to the firehouse. But the black hole inside of me would eat it up and my life got worse. And it was just a downward spiral that started taking me down. So when people are dealing with addiction and drugs and trying to get that dopamine and trying to find that hope and find that good feeling, they're chasing and chasing and chasing. I don't want to say I fully understand because I hate saying, oh, well, until you walk in someone else's shoes. But all I know is that I've been at the lowest of lows and packing all this crud that the world says is going to make us feel better. It's not going to make us feel better. And ultimately it's going to take us down.
Yeah. Well, I think whether you're using addiction or firefighting or whatever, hopelessness is real. And it's pretty devastating. I know in your book you mentioned that that despair and that hopelessness made you even consider taking your life at 10 years old. I think in the book it said like 10 years old. So that was like already present, in your life there. And then obviously not having the Lord at that time, where do you turn except the resources of the flesh? Right.
Right. And even then I had no resources. I didn't know anything because even I encounter a lot of people who are not Christians. I'm very honest with this. And if I tell them and come right out of the gate and almost like I'm discipling a non-believer, which is not a good thing to do and stuff. We're supposed to plant the seeds, testimony, show them what we've been given. But if I come right out of the gate and say, you need to go to a Christ-centered rehab and this is what's going to go for you, bro, ears are shutting down in front of me and stuff. So I will tell people sometimes that are non-Christian, hey, bro, there's some help over here. I want you to get to clear out all this garbage you're putting in yourself. Don't get me wrong. I'll be praying for you to hear the voice of God while you're clearing out all the noise of this world and stuff. But even back then, no one offered me secular help, if you will. I was just, if I spoke up, I got beat down. And then once I became a firefighter, if I showed weakness, I'd be eaten alive. And so, yeah, it did take me into a bad area of my life where I was literally only a couple minutes away from taking my life, man. And it was a bad deal, that's for sure.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing about that? Because that was like, I had a note there about that portion in the book with the jumper, and you kind of identified with that and you were right at that moment in your life. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Oh, totally. Yeah. So, and when it's cool is like to talk about my book, but the fun thing about a memoir is it's your real life, and so to give backgrounds and it's a little bit extra that you can't fill into a book. I love doing that. But we were responding to the Bay Bridge for a suicidal jumper. And when we got there, I thought it was like 1,000 others that I've been to or other suicidal folks I've been to that we're going to talk. They're either going to come back over the rail or we're going to lovingly tackle them to not hurt them, but to get them, to the hospital and stuff. So I didn't think much about it. But as I was talking to this guy, I started noticing something. And disclaimer, I just want to be clear. I'm not calling this guy evil. The guy who I was talking to is not evil, but you could see like something in him that was not part of him, an emptiness that was being filled by like an evilness. And I was just looking at him and you could just see the blank stare in his eyes. And it was like he was trying to talk over a voice that was like pulling him down. And I'm like, hey, bro, come back over the rail and let's head on over to the hospital. Don't worry, we're not going to tie you down. We're just going to take you over and get you cared for, bro, and make sure you're okay. And all of a sudden, his head snapped up, and it was like a moment of clarity. He had. He said, "I'm sorry." And he stepped back and he took his eternal plunge off the Bay Bridge in front of me. And when our eyes locked, I saw him, but I also saw something inside of him that scared me to death because it's the same emptiness that I had inside of me and the same evilness, if you will. Not that I was evil. I want to be very clear on that, that I wasn't doing evil things, nor was that man. But it was like the emptiness was being replaced with an evilness that was wanting to take me down. And when I got back on the fire engine, it's like the evilness climbed on with me. The darkness, as I like to explain it, rode back to the firehouse. It came home with me and it started living with me. And so that thing that I had been feeling since I was like 10 years old when I first wanted to take my life, we finally knew where we stood with one another. It's like, okay, he's going to win. And it was so chilling at that moment, man. And I had nowhere to turn to because it sounds cliche, but I like to say when a building's on fire, we can come up with a plan to attack it. It's super simple. But when you're a non-believer that has no Christian friends around you and your soul's on fire, bro, how are you going to fight that? And so it was a point in my life where I felt like I was being taken down, and I felt like that jumper on the Bay Bridge.
Would you also describe that black hole that you're talking about as hopelessness?
Totally, man. So I'm going to talk from a Christian standpoint here so people can get it, whether you're Christian or not. We talk about being in the light and the dark. When you're in the dark, and Christians can be over in the dark, okay? There's nothing good there. It's a hopeless land. You're just wandering through it, and it's a total separation feeling from God. And I just want to be clear, I'm not saying you lose your salvation or anything like that, but it's like a depression where you're over in the darkness. There's nothing good there. But you'll find little pieces of fake goodness there, and then you'll try to gobble it up and make it feel better, but it actually makes the darkness that much darker in your life. Whereas opposed on the light, you can be having a bad day, but when you scripturally follow what God wants for you and you stay in the light, that's where this thing called the fruit is. It's not like God says, you do this and I'm going to reward you, but he's like, I'm not putting fruit in the darkness. That's all bad over there. The fruit is over here in the light. You have to put your effort to stay in the light and get that fruit, taste that sweetness and stuff. And so to try to transfer from dark to light, it's a tough place to be because the darkness just wants to hold you in. And a lot of times, I'll be honest with you, my flesh still craves a lot of the darkness, right? The spirit within me is craving the fruits and everything. And so to be in that darkness and to describe it, it's just an emptiness. To me, it's not to go theological on you here, but it's a hell on earth. It's a total separation from God where there's no lifeline there whatsoever. Everything just gets worse and worse as opposed to in the light. Yeah, man, evilness is going to slide over there and try to mess with you, and we're going to have crummy days. But there's hope there. There's the fruits. There's the good things. There's the rescue over on that side, where the other side is just death, man. Yeah. And so that's how I like to explain it to make sense of it to the lay person, if you will.
Something I've noticed, and I'm just kind of piecing all this together because, my exposure to first responders is relatively new, really, with like doing this podcast. In fact, we recently did a podcast with a gentleman named Devin O'Day from First Responder Wellness in Newport Beach. So they basically offered. Are you familiar with Devin?
I'm familiar with him. I don't know personally, but yes, I do know him. I've seen his stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we had him on, and so these conversations with yourself, with him, just kind of opening up that world. Something that I noticed before with a lot of first responders, specifically like law enforcement and stuff, is like a cynicism, right, toward life, and I think I'm kind of realizing that, like, when every day you're dealing with the worst of not only society, people's intentions, but just bad outcomes, that it starts to do something to you, right? And trying to process that and internalize that, it's got to go somewhere, right? If you're not dealing with that, it's going to fester into something not pleasant. And I'm just realizing, that day to day dealing with that stuff where, me or someone else might, maybe in a lifetime, you experience one of these events. You guys are experiencing them sometimes multiple times, a shift, or certainly, every week in these things, it has an effect on a person, is what I'm seeing. And one of the stories that he shared, and I was kind of also thinking about your story with the jumper, is that sometimes even when you do everything right, the outcome is not good, right?
Nailed it.
And how do you process that?
Dude, there is so much in there to unpack that we could do 2 hours of a show just on
Well,
that
if you would
question.
unpack some of it, just maybe
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that.
Well, let me start off here with the first thing is a lot of first responders come in with lies in their head of being taught our whole life, you can do whatever you want to do and become whatever you want to be, right? Well, I was told that. But dude, I wanted everyone to live. They're dying. So it was on me. So if you think about that, when we're telling people you can do whatever you want, become whatever you do, work hard enough and it's going to happen, right? Well, that's the biggest failure. I mean, you're basically telling someone they're God. And I was the worst God on the face of the earth because I didn't want my parents to divorce, but they did. I didn't want to live in abuse, but I did. I wanted love, but I couldn't find it. I didn't want people to die in front of me, but they were dying. So it was on my shoulders because that's what the world taught me. And so as a firefighter or first responder, think of it like this. Our job is to show up to the total manifestation in the flesh of evilness, meaning a head-on wreck, right? We're dealing with death, something that we're not going to encounter in heaven, but we're encountering it here. We're showing up to someone taking their own life, someone getting beat down, someone who's been shot, stabbed, a house burning. There's no house fires in heaven. But here on earth, as we're making our way through this fallen world, we're having to deal with all this. And when we weren't given the tools, bro, it's going to weigh you down because I tell guys all the time, I always want good outcomes. But if I base my love for my job, love for being an Oakland fireman, especially working at the busiest firehouse in West Oakland, where I don't want to try to sound better than anyone else, but when you're going 2 to 3 working structure fires a day, we actually pull people out of burning buildings. You're going on over 300 shootings per year just out of that firehouse. Bro, you witness it and it's rough. But I wanted every outcome to be good. If I was to worry about the outcomes, it'd be the worst job on the face of the earth. If I said, this job is going to be great, but I want every outcome to be good, it's the worst job on the face of the earth. What I try to tell guys is find joy in the obedience. We obediently show up. We obediently do our job. We obediently use all the gifts and skills that God's given us and use it to bless others the best we can. The outcome's his, as long as we put our work. And don't get me wrong, it's not like I can just sit in the firehouse and not go to a fire and say, okay, God, put it out and pray it out. No, we have to get our butts there and fight it. But when you've been trained by this world that the outcome is on your shoulders, the weight bears, it just weighs you down over years, man, as a firefighter and first responder. And that's what was happening to me. And I see it happening all the time. The other thing that I want to throw in there to unpack this is as a first responder, and I'm just going to stick firefighters, but I want to include cops and everyone in this, is we show up to work. And when we go out the door on a 911 call, we show up as stone cold lifesavers. Stone cold lifesavers. No emotion, no feeling. Our whole emotions got to be put aside because if I make a decision based on my emotions, as opposed to the scene that I see in front of me, I'm gonna make poor decisions. I got to put that aside. Well, let's talk about that. You have to put it aside, but then go back to the firehouse and become a person again. And then all of a sudden come off of a 5th alarm fire where maybe multiple people died. And 30 minutes later, come 8:30 the next morning, you're walking through the door and it's daddy's home, mommy's home, and kids are hugging on you. And you were just dealing with dead people a half hour earlier. So we got to come up with the tools and stuff to cope because as you know, with the line of work you're in, people are going to start coping with all the wrong tools, And so I just want to unpack a little of that and add a little something on there to kind of give you retrospect on it.
Anything come to mind as far as like something that stands out as one of those situations where you did everything right? You did everything that you were supposed to, but the outcome just sucked.
Oh, bro, I could give you thousands, man. I mean, it's so weird that you'll show up on scenes and you're thinking, okay, I got this, right? I got this. We're going, and then all of a sudden the vital signs start going down, the shock sets in, the traumatic thing that the person went through, and they're starting to die in front of you, dude. And when you witness people take their final breaths as their eternities are being locked in, I hate being cliche, but it changes you, man. It changes you on so many levels and stuff. Number one, I'll throw this out there because I just can't get it out of me, is it gives me a total push to want to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, of course. But on the flip side, man, situations of like, you think the things are going to be okay and they're not, it crushes you. And it's normally not for me personally, I want to speak for everyone. It's not the person that I couldn't save. it's hearing the voices of the ones that were left behind that crushes my soul, dude. You know, that I'm going back to the firehouse. I'm going home. I'm going to be fine. But now I have a mom who lost a daughter, who lost a kid. Those are the ones that just hunt me personally. And again, I don't want to put words in other people's mouths, but I talk to a lot of guys and gals, and I think that they have the same feelings too and stuff. As those are the rough ones. Is the why didn't you save my family? Why weren't you here quick enough? You know, one thing I've never heard as a firefighter on scene of a fire is, hey, you guys got here nice and quick. You know, it's always been, why weren't you here sooner? Why? And they put it on us as a person, man. And so without even just going down to one scene in general, it's every scene where you're hoping you could have made a difference and you didn't. That's rough. But then this is why I'm so clear we got to stay in scripture, man, because, you know, I fall back on John 16:33. The day I became a Christian, and people are like, so you're all better. Everything got all better. I'm like, no, dude, this world still sucks. I'm going to murders. I still have some depression. I have all this other stuff. And like, so why'd you become a Christian? Well, got this little thing called hope now, which carries me through. But also, I have this whole book of wisdom now that's not just, you know, written by man, that's breathed out by God. And he says, hey, in this world, you're going to have, it's going to suck basically the whole time you're in this world. There's me. But my son Jesus has overcome this world. Keep following him and he'll bring you through to the end. Dude, that helps me. That's the hope that I need to get through. And that's something I hope other responders or even people that are struggling with addiction, you know, that get addicted to the Bible, if you will, you know, and stuff, and get into there for the true wisdom that the author of the universe wants you to have.
So what did you like personally? So maybe substance abuse wasn't your, you know, primary choice, but what were some things that you used to cope with, you know, seeing death every day, dealing with this stuff?
Well, let's just say alcohol was one of my choices, and praise God, whatever it is, I'm not a medical provider, so I don't know the genes or what, you know, people can have. They get it. Well, I can't say who it is, but I have family who are alcoholics. And so praise God, it didn't get a hold of me, but dude, drinking and going out was part of mine. Getting drunk was part of mine. But for me, why I didn't do it anymore was because it affected my depression so bad. It's why I don't even drink to this day, is when I even have 2 glasses of wine, and I'm not for, pro, against. Okay, I'm against. I'll throw it out there. I'm against. But even 2 glasses of wine, I wake up the next morning and my chemicals are off balance. And I believe in science, the same science a secular person believes in. I just know God created it. I got to steward it the way he wants us to steward it. And it would mess me up. So yeah, alcohol was part of it. Buying stuff, hanging out, living a fake life, putting on a fake persona of happiness was something I do. Isolation. That's my biggest one I even struggle with today. And people who know me, I tell them that. My biggest issue when my brothers come to look for me is when I isolate myself, because being an extrovert trapped in an introvert's body is a tough place to be, you know, and stuff. And so for me, it's isolation. I would rather head to Maui and surf for, 3 months straight with my family, because I'll never isolate myself from my family and stuff, our sons and my wife and our dogs, but isolating myself from the responsibilities above and beyond that's my drug of choice, bro. It truly is and stuff. And it's something I'm still working through right now, and something I'm going to continue to work through. And how it's going to change, I don't know. I just follow the Lord, and then he makes it a little better every day. And then when I fall down, he picks me back up and says, you can't do this whole isolation thing, man. And so if someone's hearing this and your addiction is the pill stuff, I hear you, dude. It's hard to walk away from that kind of stuff. But again, I keep saying the word cliche without being cliche here. When we start finding joy in being obedient to the Lord, and like people say, oh, find your joy in the Lord. Well, that's a lame statement. How am I going to find that? But when I find the one who loves me more than I can even explain is asking me to do something, I want to do that. And I find joy in being obedient and stuff. And if it's saying, don't take this pill, don't drink this and stuff, because you will have something better for you, that's where I find my joy. So my joy is found in being in ministry at my local church and doing that kind of stuff, and being available for the brothers and sisters to point them to the same help that I needed.
Yeah, and even this kind of stuff, right? Getting out there, speaking, sharing with people. Yeah, it's never good to be selfish and self-centered. That never ends well. Being other-centered and selfless and in service is always a good idea.
And what's cool about that was I would go off a sidetrack here. You'll like this also as a pastor. When I was still a hard-headed, like I didn't believe, dude, I would tell you, take your Jesus and your book of lies out of my firehouse, which I did in the book that I wrote that I'd throw people out of my firehouse that would try to do that to me. But I met a cool pastor one time and we became friends right away and stuff. My wife took me to church, and it was a really harrowing experience for me because I had struggles with another church the day before I almost killed myself, which is a story in itself. But we got together, and he realized I was a firefighter, and he realized how to talk to me as a firefighter because he's so real. And one day he's asked me, "Hey, so tell me about firefighting." I was like, "Dude, I just love helping people. I love you doing this. I love doing that." And he goes, "You're self-centered, bro." And I'm like, "What? Bro, I almost have died like 3 times trying to save people's lives." Like, "Yeah, you're still self-centered." He goes, "Jason, well, could you just look up and say, hey, I was blessed with these gifts and abilities, and God, and I recognize that, and now I'm going to honor God by using them to help other people." Then you're not self-centered. Otherwise, I'm just seeing a self-centered guy. And bro, I got so mad at the dude.
Yeah.
But that was a seed that, and you know where I'm going with that, dude. And that was a seed that planted the gospel message in me.
Yeah.
Now, do I hit people like that all the time? No, I have to do an assessment on people first to make sure if how I'm going to approach them. But at the end of the day, that self-centeredness, like you said, the self-worship, everything, even when we're at the lowest, we're still trying to self-worship if we're not turning to the Lord for that help.
Yeah. So, prior to coming to the Lord, and I'm just, a lot of this I'm just drawing from your memoir, they referred to you as demon seed, right? or it seemed like they shortened it to seed, right?
Seed, yeah.
So you obviously had a lot of animosity towards the things of God. And then it seems like, for sure your relationship with your wife Christy was kind of like the tipping point, right? Just having that personal interaction, human connection, a relationship. I mean, and I guess just pointing that out, that's huge, right? That's huge. Having those healthy, positive relationships, and in your case, developed into eventually a relationship with the Lord. But I mean, it seems like that was a starting point for you for sure.
Oh, big time. And when Christy came into my life, what I explain to people is everyone's like, "Oh, the love of a woman, this, that, and the other will save a man." Stop with that nonsense. I say, stop with that nonsense. What it was, I could see something in her, something I didn't have, something I wanted. Now, don't get me wrong. My wife is the hottest chick around. Okay. I mean, even to this day, I'm like, whoa. And we met 24, 25 years ago and stuff. So there was that. Yeah, I chased her because of her hotness. I'll keep that real. And I tell young guys, I'm like, go to church. There's hot chicks. I'm sorry, pastor. But anyways, she had something shining out of her. But more importantly, she was real. She let that light guide her. She let it pour out onto not just me, but other people. And it was a realness. Whereas opposed to, not all Christians did this to me, but I was so tired of hearing I was going to hell. I'm being honest with you. I was over it. That really, I'm going to hell. Thanks, bro. I don't need to hear them. Or that would shut me down from hearing the person. But I was never an atheist. I just was so full of sadness and anger and hate. I hated anything that was good because I couldn't obtain it, And so when a pastor would come into our firehouse and I'd yell for him to get out of my firehouse, I wasn't mad at him. I was just like, dude, everything you're trying to give me, I'm not going to obtain. So it's a safety mechanism for me to throw you out instead of be let down again, and stuff. But yeah, my nickname was the Demon Seed, and you'll still hear that every once in a while. Like, you go to the Oakland Fire Department, "Hey, Demon Seeds." I'm like, guys, really? I'm preaching this week. Okay.
All right. It never changed. You never got a new handle.
Yeah, no, I never got a new one. I just let it go and stuff and everything. So yeah, there was that. But I think, when as a person, I don't even like saying faith, a follower of Christ, if we're not living it and letting it pour out of us, dude, we're not going to do a whole lot of good, and that's what happened with my wife was, for whatever reason, God let me recognize him within her, and I wanted more of what she had, to be honest with you. And even to this day, I want more of what she has a lot of times when I'm not feeling it.
Yeah, that's good. Yep, got to be authentic, and so yeah, and we can either be the fragrance of life to people or the fragrance of death.
Right, right, yeah, and you got to, and that's one thing that I don't want to say I'm gifted on certain things, because once you claim that you have a gift or something like that, people are going to ask you to use it. But evangelism, I tell so many people, especially around there, when you go out, just don't have this script in front of you. Get to know someone. I haven't earned the right to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ people's way. I look at it. People go nuts, especially my Reformed brothers. I'm like, chill out, you guys. Okay, hold on a second here. But if I just come at you and I'm preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, and I'm not calling someone dumb, but if they're blind and deaf to it like I was, I'm not
Mhm.
hearing it. I'm hearing something totally different. I'm hearing judgment. I'm hearing all this other stuff. But if you take me out like a pastor does, hang out with me on my worst day and get to know me, you've earned that right now to get into areas of my life that I wouldn't let you in. And that was again what happened when he had talked to me about partying and doing this. And I wasn't an avid partier, but he'd be like, so what are you getting out of that? What are you
Mm.
getting out of staying home? What are you getting out of drinking? What are you getting out of buying more stuff? What are you getting out of that? And my own honest answer was nothing. I'm getting worse out of it.
Mm.
But he had the right to
Mhm.
ask me those questions.
There's a saying, I'm sure you've heard it, that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Hmm.
And it just like speaks of that,
Right.
principle right there.
Right.
Getting to know people, having relationships, and then that opens the door for you to speak truth into their lives. So, do you still have contact with any of those guys from before?
Oh yeah, we have the fire department. It's so funny. Your family with 800 people when you're in the fire department, they're all your family. Then when you leave, you stay friends with about maybe six or seven of them. It's kind of like
Yeah.
anything in life. And so when you leave an organization, if you will, you have a tight knit group of people there. So yeah, I'm totally connected with those guys, with Cappy and with Raj and with them, their real names, and they're always asking for a cut of the book and all that stuff. And firefighters will always be, even Christian firefighters, like I say, we'll never go anti-God, and we're never going to unglorify God, but we'll stay firefighters. When I show up to talk to them, we'll walk into a room like, oh, the rescuer is here, because that's the name of my book. I'm like,
Yeah.
you guys, I can't. Why don't even explain to them? I'm not the rescuer. Jesus is the rescuer. They're just going to beat me down.
Yeah.
But a funny side note was not too long ago, I was having breakfast with the guys. I walk in, and they always give you a beating. When you walk into a firehouse, you're the last guy in the room. We call it's taking a beating. Everyone just starts barraging. Oh, hey, tuck your shirt in, you fatso, this, that. It's a loving thing we do that's kind of sadistic and sick.
Yeah, yeah.
I showed there. And like, oh, Jason's here. Here's the guy. Oh, he's writing about a book, and oh, he's making money off people's tragedies. They were like going heavy on me. I'm like, looking at them, sitting there quiet, and I'm sipping my coffee, and they're done. So I finally look at them all. I go, question, guys. Are any of you still making money off that fire we went to back in 2000? They're like, "Ah," and they started laughing. Of course, I didn't do it for the money. I want to be clear on that.
Of course.
But you have to shoot back at times, because if I
Yeah.
did something for the money, bro, the book, like, here's the shameless plug, it should be thrown out, dude. It's not what it's about. It was about using the grace, the gift, and the love, gifts and the love that God gave me to help other people and stuff. But
Mhm.
when I'm with my firefighter brothers, yeah, you got to shoot back every once in a while.
Yeah, yeah. You got to have thick skin too, huh?
Oh yeah, you
Have some thick skin and be able to jab them back.
Yeah, you got to walk in. It's the one place where we show our love when we're tougher on you. But it does, believe it or not, on a side note, it does fall back into that thing of why we train the guys that way, is because we show them in the drill tower, you could be the perfect firefighter, but we're going to fail you on something. And the reason we do that is to show you that you could do everything perfect. You could be the most perfect person on the face of the earth in human eyes, but you're going to fail at times. And we need you to understand that. And we need you to understand it early. And so that's why we are kind of tough on one another, because we truly want to see who can hang in this job and who's not dialed in for it. And there is a rough side of the job where we want to have the PTSD and the trauma training and all that stuff. But we do need a select group of girls and guys who God is wired to handle that. And that's how we
Mhm.
kind of filter our way in finding the proper people for that role.
So, what advice would you give? Like specifically within that world for people that are experiencing similar things, right? And obviously, they need an outlet, need some way to process that, all of that stuff that's going on. What would your advice be from your own experience?
Well, what's cool is I'm blessed to be, and to give you the answer on that, but let me give you this first. I'm blessed where I get over 200 emails and messages a day, just because social media is taken off, the book
Mm-hmm.
stuff's taken off. And I get a lot of questions, and some are just people that are struggling, which, okay, let me get to those. But the ones I like to hit is kind of like firefighting. We go to the most tragic thing right away, right?
Mm-hmm.
Triaging and stuff.
Triage, yeah.
Yeah. And so when someone's in that depth of, I don't want to continue on anymore, those are the people that I really like to speak into, because I was
Mm-hmm.
there. I was in the depths of, eternally, I was going to be separated from God, man. And I was ready to end it all. And what I want to tell people is two things. you have a responsibility yourself to reach out to folks that you know can help you, because there's people out there that we know can help us. So you have to have that responsibility on yourself, okay? But number two, understand that there's something so much better out there for you. Whether you believe in God or not, I'm going to throw it out there. You were created for something awesome in the future. And that awesome thing in the future, you may not see right now. So come alongside someone and let them be alongside. Because we always say, oh, come alongside someone who's hurting. Well, no, those who are hurting have to reach out and ask someone to come alongside them. Ask someone to come alongside you to walk you through it. And I found the best way to do that is by someone who's walked through that. Like with me, dude, I was turned away by a church because of the way I was dressed. And I wanted to go in there because all I wanted was the smiles and love that they had. But because it was a super legalistic church and I was dressed like a surfer, I got turned away. And then the next morning, a San Francisco fireman who is still not a Christian this day, who's one of my best friends, he actually saved my life because he looked into my eyes and said, let's go have breakfast, because he could see something within me. And I let him come alongside me because I could have hid it from him. But when we're in the depths, and if anyone's listening, they're in the depths of alcoholism, drug use, whatever you're going through, man, just be open and honest with someone, look them in the eyes, say you need help, and let them walk through it with you, man. And reach out to people who've already gone through it and stuff, because they'll be the ones that can really give you the truth that I think you need. Because when we're in those struggles, we don't need a fakeness or highly educated right out of the gate. We need someone to take us to those people, walk us to those people, walk alongside of us as the trained professionals are helping us out.
Yeah, and that just means, I mean, you got to be willing to make yourself vulnerable and, willing to potentially get hurt. But, when it's life and death like that, you have to do it.
And the last thing I want to say for tangible, wipe out any thoughts of ending it in your head. A new FDNY fireman whose brother ended his life after 9/11 told me this and just really hit me. He's all, don't even make it where I'm done with this world as number 100. Like, I'm going to first do this. I have all this, but don't even put it on the table.
Like, it's not even an option.
Not even an option. And dude, it's the whole, don't even think about it. And that just really resonated with me, because if someone would have told me that years ago, it would have made a difference too, and stuff. So that's just something I want to throw out there. Just don't make it an option. Don't even think about it. Find other things to become your option.
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of danced around the things that you're doing right now, the books and the speaking and things like that. You mind just sharing a little bit about that, just more specifically, and maybe also when we, produce the podcast, maybe we can have some pictures of the books and stuff that pop up so people can actually see them. And if they're interested in connecting more and hearing some of the stuff that you're doing, maybe you could just share about that.
Yeah, what's so cool right now is people talk about PTSD and all that and what's going on. And you're going to laugh. Even after I wrote my book, people started asking me about trauma. And I'm like, why are they asking me about trauma? I want them to, this book's about getting people to the Lord. And I'm getting like agitated and stuff. And all of a sudden, my beautiful wife, who is meet her chapter 13 in the book, she goes, idiot. Yeah, my wife and I, we talk like that to one another. She's like, you put your suicide story in there, okay? You have these traumas. But because it was so long ago, and I truly am in a good place now, where I tell people, don't try to heal others if you're not healed yourself. Just don't. It's not a good thing. And don't look for healing and helping others and stuff. Wait till you're in a spot where you're like, okay, cool. And the Lord tells you to go help other people. But bro, I was so mad about that. But then I looked, I'm like, oh, dang, I was a train wreck. I read my own book and stuff. I am a mess and everything. And so now to go out there and speak to people on so many levels in the first responder community and outside of it, because instead of even calling it PTSD, I talk to people and say trauma causes pain, and pain sucks, whatever you're going through. And if I could speak into that and point you to the help that you need and give you the tools that the Lord's given us, plus point you to the Lord, that's what I love to do. So I get to go around the world, not just the nation, because the book sold out around the world and stuff. And I get to speak to select groups of audience, but I'm so selective on the groups that I speak to. And I know I'm blessed to be in a position where I can pick and choose and stuff, but I get to do that. I get to write now more books and stuff, which is going to be really, the next one coming out, I'm going to be really stoked about and stuff, because it's going to be a book on blue collar like sanctification and stuff. So I'm really excited about how that's coming up. But I get to do that. There's possibly a movie that's coming up too, and we're still working our way through all that stuff. So just being involved in ministry full time, it's been crazy, and that's where I'm at every day. People can get my books, anywhere they're on Barnes and Noble, or I always point them at rescuerbook.com and things like that. But just
what are the books, if you wouldn't mind naming them?
So the first one is The Rescuer. Sorry if it's too shiny there. And then I have a devotional called Jesus is All We Need, because no matter what I do in life, it all circles back around to Jesus is all we need. And so I was approached and asked to write a devotional on that, even though it wasn't really something I was thinking about doing. But I wrote a devotional called Jesus is All We Need, Devotions to Experience the Rescuing Love of God. And so I have that out there. And then the third book isn't named as of yet, and we don't have a release date.
On the devotion, are you basically pulling life's experiences from your firefighting career and things to illustrate principles and bring hope, that kind of?
Yeah, so we wrote this one, and my publisher came at me and said, don't just write firefight, put 2 per every 10, put 2 in there. Just give you guys some backstories on it, because not everyone is a firefighter, but it's really cool. You put life in general and things, and there's so many good devotional writers out there that go through a walk through the forest. They can just feel God, and I'm not making fun of them, bro. That's not me, okay? I feel God down in the dirt and dirty is where I feel him and stuff. So I just wrote it about, being a dad, the struggles that I've gone through. Obviously the firefighting stuff, it's all in there. And then sometimes just like, the certain stories out of the Bible without theologically or expositing them, if they will, just devoting your time to them and then pushing people to the scriptures so they'll spend some time in it and stuff. And it's been a fun book because, I have 80-year-old women all the way down to 17-year-old volunteer firefighters reading it. So it's a cool group.
Nice. And then you said you have a podcast. What's that?
Yeah, it's the Jesus is All We Need podcast. And then I started the Walking Through the Fire podcast, which is going to be kicking back up here in a couple of weeks. So the Jesus is All We Need podcast.
Okay.
And then Walking Through the Fire, which is going to be more fire department stuff, but everyone can listen to it.
These are weeklies?
Nuggets, yeah.
What's that? Weekly podcasts or
no? I drop them. I'm kind of messed up as ADD as I am. I just drop them when I drop them, and it gets the audience. And for whatever reason, they still listen to it, so I don't have to stick on that weekly thing and stuff. So I'll drop it, and it'll get all the downloads, and people hear it. Then once I start getting lots of emails and texts saying you need to do another one, a few months later, I'll bust out some more.
Okay, and then you have a website. Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah, I know jasonsautel.com, but what I do is I push everyone to rescuerbook.com, so rescuerbook.com, and that'll get them where they need, because in all of there it shows my social medias and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, Jason, thank you for coming on and sharing and giving us your story, message of hope, and we're excited for everything that's going on in your world and getting out the gospel and just, being a beacon of light.
Man, thanks for having me on. And I'm super stoked because later this year, I'm going to make it a push to get down there, be in studio, and hang out with you
we'd
guys.
love to have you in studio.
And have it around a Sunday so I can maybe, worship alongside you guys too. And stuff. That would work out. That'd be sick. And
absolutely.
Stuff. So
we'll work with your schedule. We'd love to have you at church that day. And
my wife and I love worshiping at other churches when we're traveling. We do so much travel, so we love to hang out, sit in the back row, and just enjoy it and stuff. So love what you guys are doing, man.
Thanks,
seriously.
Man.
I mean, they're inside the fire department and outside the fire department world. Man, I love what you guys are doing. So keep on keeping on, guys.
All right. Well, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for being a part of this much-needed conversation as we expose the raw truths about addiction. Don't forget to like, follow, and most importantly, share. Remember, addiction is the dirty little secret that every family deals with, but nobody wants to talk about.